Hey there, Blue Mages, Liam here, and welcome to the Blue Academy Raid Guide for the second Coil of Bahamut Turn 4, or T9 for short. This fight is a step up in difficulty from T5, and it may take a bit longer for some groups to complete. The fight starts out with us pulling Nael as we would any other boss. Throughout most of the fight, only the tank should be in front of Nael, as she does have a nasty cleave. Nael has quite a number of abilities in this phase. They are Stardust, Raven Dive, Dalamud Dive, Raven's Beak, Iron Chariot, Lunar Dynamo, Thermionic Beam, and Meteor Stream. It may sound like a lot of abilities, but I do promise it's not actually that bad. Let's go over each ability really quickly. Stardust puts a meteor marker above a random player. This person should bring this to one of the marked locations and then move away once the meteor marker over their head disappears. These are the markers that I usually use. This will drop a meteor dealing proximity-based damage to nearby players. If two meteors are dropped within 8 yalms of each other, they will explode and wipe the raid. Groups should only ever see 2 Stardust casts in this first phase, and groups with solid DPS will only see 1 Stardust cast. Raven Dive isn't too spooky. She targets a random player and jumps towards them, dealing light damage. There's not really anything we can do about that. For Dalamud Dive, however, she targets the player with the highest enmity and jumps towards them, dealing big AoE damage. Stay away from the tank when this happens. Raven's Beak is a tank buster that applies the Raven Blight debuff, which explodes after 12 seconds, dealing huge damage again. The initial hit, as well as the debuff damage, should be mitigated with Diamondback. Iron Chariot is a small range AoE with a knockback. Get away from her, or you will likely be knocked into the death wall. Lunar Dynamo is a donut style AoE, so you should either be in melee range or very far away. Thermionic Beam is a beam attack that targets a single player and deals about 17,000 damage split between all nearby players. To handle this, we have everyone except for the tank stack on the person targeted, which is indicated by a red marker over their head. You can also have this person use Diamondback, but for DPS uptime purposes I don't recommend doing this and do recommend just doing the mechanic normally. Meteor Stream will target 4 random players and deal moderate AoE damage around them. To handle this, simply spread out to avoid overlapping Meteor Stream AoEs. We should never see this in Phase 1, and in Phase 3 when it comes back we have a Blue Mage way of handling it. Phase 1 gets a little bit hectic, but here's how we can handle it. To handle Stardust, drop the first meteor in one of the marked positions around the perimeter of the room. Next, have the tank use Diamondback to mitigate the Raven's Beak cast. At the same time, have the party spread out away from the center to bait the Raven Dive, and then move in towards the center to avoid Iron Chariot. Stack up for Thermionic Beam to reduce the damage. The tank should be using Diamondback around the same time to mitigate the Raven Blight debuff. Finally, if there is another Stardust, drop the meteor in a different marked location from the previous meteor. The phase transition is at 65%, which is signaled by Nael flying away. This starts the Golem phase. Everyone should put up Mighty Guard here to mitigate damage throughout the entire phase. The main idea of this phase is that golems will spawn that consume meteors and each other, growing stronger each time they do so. We will use the golems to consume meteors before killing them, as we want no meteors to remain when we leave the phase, otherwise they explode, dealing big raid-wide damage. A couple of meteors can be survived with Diamondback, but it's easy enough to exit the phase with 0, so that's what we'll aim for. During this phase there are 3 types of golems, red, blue, and green. The red golem deals AoE damage and puts fire puddles on the ground. The blue golem will pull players in and also cast Earth Shock, which can be interrupted, which deals moderate AoE damage and applies a 30-second paralysis. The green golem deals large AoE damage, large single target damage, and does a frontal cone tank buster. This golem is extremely dangerous and should always be killed as soon as possible. One small point here, identifying golems can be really tough for folks who are colorblind, so if you happen to have any colorblind party members, it can be helpful to call out relative positions of golems or mark them when they spawn. Golems spawn via meteor drops. 3 players will be marked with green meteor icons. These players should bring these to the 3 circles in the center of the arena and then leave once the marker appears over their head. Once the meteors land, a green, red, and blue golem will spawn. Assign 1 person each to deal with the red and blue golems. All other players should immediately burn down the green golem using missile or level 5 death. The red and blue players should get to their assigned position, for example north and south, to cast Sticky Tongue, followed by the look to generate some threat, and then start leading their golems to any uneaten meteors while avoiding the other golem. Once a golem has consumed 3 meteors, or there are no remaining meteors, the golems can be missiled down. The first set of golems will have at most 2 meteors to consume. If you skipped the second Stardust cast and there is only 1 meteor, then you can missile down a second golem immediately after green. However, you should coordinate this so that you do not kill them all before consuming the meteors. After this, we will have our next set of meteors spawn. Nael will randomly target 6 players, one after another in quick succession, with Stardust. As with the previous Stardust cast, we need to make sure that meteors are not too close to one another, and for that we have 2 different strategies. The easiest to implement is the gotta go fast strat. For this, as soon as we dispose of the first set of golems, everyone will stack together in one position. After a short countdown, we all start running together in the same direction around the arena. No one should pop sprint, and no one should stop moving. If we did this correctly, then the 6 meteors will all drop safely spread apart from one another. The main issue with this strat is that it is dependent on ping, so if there's a large ping disparity within your group, it can cause issues with meteors being dropped on top of one another. For that, we have the following strategy. For the rotation strat, assign a player to each cardinal and intercardinal position. Do note that the markers on the ground are not indicative of these positions and you should go off of the map instead. When the first set of golems are killed, everyone goes to their position. If a player or group of players are targeted by a meteor, they wait for the marker to disappear and then rotate clockwise. If there is a meteor already there, they continue rotating. If players get targeted with a meteor as they are rotating and there is a meteor at the next spot, they can drop it closer to the center of the arena if needed and then continue rotating as normal. This strategy is generally safer and will really only ever fail if someone gets targeted multiple times in a row while the people in front of them also get targeted and drop meteors in their path. After this set of meteors, another set of golem meteors will spawn. We handle this set of golems exactly the same way as before, only the red and blue golems should consume 3 meteors each before being killed this time around. After all of this is done, move to the positions shown here with the tank on one spot and everyone else on the other. There is an incoming Mega Flare during the phase transition, so mitigate appropriately with Gobskin or Mighty Guard. Heal up, and then it's time for Heaven's Fall. Nael rejoins the fight by casting Dalima Dive on the tank. She will then drop a big pillar in the center of the room, killing anyone underneath and knocking players back. You can use Shorecast to prevent the knockback, but just be sure that you don't get knocked back into the death wall. There will be yellow triangular AoEs coming out from the pillar, but if we use the positions shown, we don't even have to dodge them. She will use a double hit Bahamut's Claw, which should be mitigated or healed through. This is a good opportunity for DPS to use Moonflute openers again, and push her into the final phase quickly. She transitions at 47%, but if we don't push her quickly enough, an ad will spawn. Kill the ad with death, avoid the resulting AoE, and then have anyone with a purple Garrett Twist debuff cleanse themselves with the white circles on the ground to avoid death. During this phase and the final phase, Nael will use Bahamut's Claw, a tank buster that hits multiple times in quick succession. During Heaven's Fall it only hits 2 times, but during the final phase it will hit 5 times. The tank should use Diamondback to mitigate this. During the final phase, Nael no longer cleaves and the party should stack up. Nael gains access to the ability Supernova, which will target 3 players dealing light AoE damage but leaving behind black holes that deal high damage when touched. There are also dragons flying around the arena that use the following abilities. Fireball tethers to a random player and after a short delay will deal AoE fire damage around them. This damage removes the Ice Claw debuff, or applies the Fire Scorch debuff if there is no Ice Claw debuff to remove. If a player has Fire Scorched and gets hit by another Fireball, they will die. Ice Ball has no marker and deals single target ice damage to random players, rotating through the party evenly. This damage removes the Fire Scorch debuff, or applies the Ice Claw debuff if there is no Fire Scorch debuff to remove. If a player has Ice Claw and gets hit by another Ice Ball, they will die. Thunderstruck targets a random player and after 5 seconds drops an AoE that deals moderate damage and applies a Paralyze debuff. The player targeted is unaffected. This is cast after every single fireball. In short, we need to make sure that no one ever gets too many fire or ice debuffs. The way we handle this is by stacking for alternating fireballs, starting with the first fire out. The timing works out such that players should not get double tapped by any given spell and killed. Thunderstruck should always move away from the group. Running to the back of Nael is far enough to not hit the party, and will also be safe from any Lunar Dynamo casts. There are also dive bombs like in T5 and meteor streams during this phase, but we won't even discuss these in detail as we can just cheese them with Diamondback. This phase is chaotic, but the abilities follow a predictable order which is shown here. Mitigate Bahamut's Claw with Diamondback. Bring the first fire debuff out, but not too far as she will jump to a random player and then cast Lunar Dynamo. Get close to her hitbox to avoid Dynamo, while the player targeted with Thunderstruck either goes to the opposite side of Nael inside the safe spot for Dynamo, or as far away as possible. If they get hit by Dynamo, they probably won't die, so they can just stay out if they need to. Bring the next fire debuff in and share it with the group, while the Thunderstruck player again avoids the group. Bring the next fire debuff out, and everyone spreads out to the perimeter to avoid Iron Chariot while also avoiding the Thunderstruck player. If targeted by Supernova, just keep moving. After Supernovas are cast, quickly meet back up in the center of the room to share Thermionic Beam damage. or have the targeted player use Diamondback. Share the Fireball debuff and then have the tank use Diamondback to mitigate Bahamut's Claw, while again moving Thunderstruck away from the group. Spread out loosely to avoid sharing too much Meteor Stream damage and have the tank separate from the group to avoid killing anyone with Dalamud Dive. As soon as you see the Meteor Stream marks, hard cast Diamondback, that means no swift cast, and watch the explosions. If timed correctly, no one will die or be knocked back, and only the tank should be hit by Dalamud Dive afterwards. She then repeats the spells as above, but uses Iron Chariot and Lunar Dynamo instead of Meteor Stream during dive bombs. Groups should never really see this second set of dive bombs, but it can be handled with Diamondback as before. Nael's sting percentage is around 15%. For most groups, this will be shortly after the first set of dive bombs. Fish for physical Libra, put up an off guard, and then use your finisher to put this Raven in the ground. If you liked this video, feel free to check out these other ones. While you're at it, sting that subscribe button, share your bad breath in the comments, and stay tuned for more Blue Mage content.